right, good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome my fellow panelists up on stage. So come on up. All right, I'll slide down here. Work out some logistics here. Two of us have very bad jet lag right now, so it takes us a little while to figure out how to sit down. All right, very good. Well, welcome everybody. Today's panel is Tizen yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And the goal of this panel is really to give you some idea and some context of where Tizen has come from, where we are today, where we're going, so that you can understand kind of how did we get to where we are and how do we think about it. And one of the great things about today's panel is that we have a number of panelists who represent different members of the Tizen ecosystem. And so we can see this through their eyes as well. I've already been introduced, but I'd like to give them a chance to introduce themselves. Let's start with Joyce.
Thank you for inviting us today, Brian and Samsung and Tizen. I'm Joyce from Unity Technologies, and I'm from the Singapore office. We look after Southeast Asia and India, and we want to share more about what our partnership with Tizen is and where we hope to bring more for developers, Unity developers.
Thanks, Ryan. My name is Chandra Bajpai. I'm with OpenMobile. I'm glad to be here. I'm really excited to talk about how OpenMobile ACL product is helping expand the Tizen ecosystem.
Okay. Luke?
Hi, I'm Alok. I'm a local. I'm out of Mumbai. CEO and founder of Games to Win. We've got about 60 million downloads on the app stores. We're trending at about 2 million a month. And I think it's awesome to be on this panel with all you guys. And I think my job here is to really explain the pleasures and the pains of being a publisher and what platforms can do and how they can deliver ROI. And I'm happy to share what I know.
Okay, very good.
Can I just make so guys in the room there's still a lot of chairs on this side. So if you want to come in, you can actually be comfortable. There are lots of empty chairs on this side of the room. Sorry,
okay.
Brian.
Good call. Thank you. All right. Well, before we actually get started, I'd actually like to say a few words about what got us to this point. And for those of you who don't know or who haven't been to, say, a Tizen developer conference, for the past 4.5 years, I worked for the Linux Foundation. And Tizen was my project for the vast majority of that time. And the Linux Foundation, of course, is the host of the Tizen project. And so, we get a kind of a good perspective on this. It was largely an outsider's perspective, and now that have joined Samsung, I have the insider's perspective as well. But I realize that many of the people in this room probably haven't seen really, kind of the progression over time. So I just wanted to walk you through to where we are, which will help put some of the discussions in maybe a bit more context. So Tizen was started, it was announced in 2011. It was a joint effort, announced between Samsung, Intel, Linux Foundation as the main parties. And there were a couple of things at the time that really set it apart. So one of them was this concept of profiles. This idea, let's create one operating system that could be used as the base for just a wide variety of devices. Everybody likes to talk about mobiles because it's the easiest thing to talk about. It's easy to write about, it's easy for people to understand, so we talk about mobiles a lot. But it really, from the very start, the intention was to go so much broader than that. We were talking about TVs and talking about cars and talking about other types of devices, many of which didn't even exist at the time. So this was one of the things that really set it apart. And another one was a very strong focus on web in HTML5. And of course, this does still persist today. It's, we talk about the major APIs of Tizen. We have the web framework for web developers. We have the native framework for native developers. You can write hybrid apps. And we focused really hard in Tizen on performance on really both of these two pillars. That's been very pervasive from the very early days of Tizen. And coming forward a few years now, a lot has changed. Last year in particular, the past the past 12 months have been huge for Tizen. Certainly the Z1 has been released, and that was very, very big news because that's been anticipated for many years. But a lot of other things kind of snuck in under the radar while we were waiting for the Z1 to show up. In virtually every case, they fit a very specific pattern, which is where a device was released, consumers were happy with the device, and we find out that, oh, by the way, it's been running Tizen. So a good example is cameras. So the NX300 camera line came out. Consumers loved the device. They said, this is a great camera. We really like it. By the way, it's running Tizen. This, of course, has turned to the NX500, the NX1, and all of these are devices where consumers are pretty happy with the software. The wearable devices, the Gear 2 and the Gear S, device comes out, consumers wear them, they like them. By the way, it's running Tizen, but the main thing is the user experience. And then, of course, the biggest announcement to date was this year at CES when they announced that all Samsung Smart TVs from 2015 onwards were going to be running Tizen. But again, the focus is the user experience. So this is going into other areas as well. And you can look at there's been talk about white goods and vacuum cleaners and things like that, to the point where you can kind of establish a pattern of what type of device you can sort of expect to see something like Tizen on. Does it have very tight power requirements or computing requirements? Does it basically just need a screen or a network connection? These are the sorts of things that Tizen does really well on. And these are all things that, if you're waiting for the phone, you might have missed. But this has all been happening in the background. It's all part of an ordered progression and an ordered plan. So by and large, the evolution of Tizen has been pretty straightforward when you look at it from that lens. And this makes a whole lot of sense when you look at it from a company like Samsung that produces a lot of devices, a lot of different variants of devices. You don't want to reinvent the operating system every time you create something new. That just doesn't make sense. You want to have your product teams working on the things that matter to the app developer and the things that matter to the consumer. Because things that matter to the consumer drive sales, sales then drive sales to app developers. So Tizen has been very, very much a part of this strategy, and for that reason, during today's panel, we're going to talk largely about app development. Of course, we have Unity 3D, which is responsible for a vast majority of the high-performance games that are in any market, Tizen or any others. We have Open Mobile. Open Mobile provides a really good, really interesting way to get apps onto a platform very quickly with a very minimal amount of effort. And then, of course, Games to Win is an actual game provider, and they as it turns out, work with both organizations here. So Iluk can tell us a bit about it from a app developer standpoint. So with that said, I'm going to start the grilling. Get ready. No, I'm going to be nice to them. I do have some questions for them. At some point, assuming that we have enough time, if you have questions, then we'll be certainly happy to take questions from you as well. So, all right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Luke, let's start with you. So, Games to Win has made just phenomenal strides in the app markets. We're talking earlier, early on, the vast majority of your work was creating games for the web, so they'd have cross-device portability. And now you're really focusing really deeply on app markets. But what's helped you make these strides? What's made Games to Win unique in India and then globally?
We've not really followed the cookie cutter approach of being a great game company. Mm-hmm. We've said that so it's just about how you look at yourself and what are you trying to seek out to do. Mm-hmm. It's like the movie business. Everybody wants to make Star Wars, and there's one guy who made it, and there are 99,000 people who are trying to make it. The other way to think of it is, can I make great content that everybody loves to watch? So very early on, we had this view that, like television, gaming is going to be actually consumable content that people are going to play casually. They're going to have fun on it. They're going to snack on it, and then they're going to forget it. I haven't met any games company owner who says, people are going to forget my game. But that's the truth, and you have to face it. And once you overcome that, you then get down to saying, okay, if I'm going to make a game that people are going to forget, then how do I keep my how do I make a company based on a fact of product, which is 7-day retention on any game today. If you're above 15, you're God %. So what we did, Brian, was we looked at it, upside down, and we said, let's build snacky, consumable content. Let's throw it up on the walls, on the app stores, see what sticks, see what goes out, see what we're good at. And we figured out 3 things that we're really doing well. In India, we're doing a very strong cricket portfolio. And I was mentioning to you that, in India, the sports category is the only category where you will see Indian content on top. There is no other category in the app stores in India where you'll see Indian games, which clearly tells you that the Indian consumer is very sophisticated. The second one is dress-up games for us, because there's at least 200 million tween girls in the world who love to dress girls up on apps. They wake up every morning, they sleep in the night, dressing up, dolls on apps. And the third are drive and parking games. We're fascinated by parking games. Not driving, not racing, not anything else, parking. We think that's a huge, that's a profession in itself. And, I'm happy to share that I just looked at some ranks. We're just touching 25 top US racing ranks iTunes right now with a game called High School Driving Test. And it's all about how to teach you how to park. So if you can find your niche and if you can find truth in what you do, I think you can build a great games company.
Gotcha. So kind of taking what you're saying and taking a step back, it sounds like for you, there are a couple of things that are fairly important. One of them is the ability to deploy across multiple platforms and to be able to do this quickly. And fortunately for us, we have 2 people on stage for whom this is their core value proposition. So let's start with Chandra. Chandra, tell us, for anybody who's not familiar with ACL and Open Mobile, can you talk a little bit about what it is and what you do?
Sure. So Open Mobile has a interesting technology called ACL, Application Compatibility Layer. At the end of the day, what it allows is Android apps to run on non-Android environments like Tizen. And if you were to take a look at the end user, here's a Z1. If they want to, the user sees an icon, they touch that icon, and all of a sudden they're playing their game, right? In this case, it's Angry Birds. It runs exactly like they expect it to as they expect on a, say, Samsung Galaxy. It runs same performance, same user experience, except it's on the Tizen operating system. What's interesting to developers is if we take your application Android binary, we don't touch it. Think of us as an Android runtime. We can make that application run on Tizen without any conversion process at all.
Great. Joyce, so I imagine that pretty much everybody in the room has heard of Unity, but all the same, give us the value proposition.
Okay, so I'm sure majority of us here have heard of Unity. Unity basically, what we want to say is we want to make it easy for developers to not focus on individual different platforms from Tizen to Android or iOS. We do the heavy lifting in the background so that you can focus on developing your game. Essentially, you build or author the game once and build it into all the different platforms. And we're really happy to now be supporting Tizen, and that makes 23 platforms that we support to date today.
Gotcha. And that's Unity 5.0 onward?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is free, so download it and try it.
Okay. So let's maybe head back down the other direction, starting with you, Joyce. So, what actually made Unity decide to add support for the Tizen platform?
So, with the celebrate our 10th anniversary, Unity started with as 3 developers, and they wanted to build a game, a dream like every one of us here. But when you actually have to look at building a game, and I'm sure Alok will agree, when you build something, you put your heart into it, you want to be able to hit, as you say, throw it on the Velcro wall and see what sticks. But if you had to go after one platform after another, it takes a lot of your resources, and it will eventually drain you. It's your passion. So what we want to do is any emerging platform, and Tizen we see as one strong platform we want to partner to enable developers to have access to a wide audience. And the best way to give you that is to make sure Unity enables you to build to those platforms, and hence we decided to partner Tizen.
Excellent. So speaking of portability, I mean, this is ACL or OpenMobile and ACL take a slightly different approach to this. Chandra, can you talk a little bit about this and essentially, when it makes sense to use ACL?
Sure. So Unity and OpenMobile have the same goal in mind. We want quick portability to all these different environments, but we don't work at the source level. We work at the binary level. So again, we're a runtime, kind of like a runtime layer. But at the end of the day, we're trying to get your apps onto these new emerging platforms very quickly. And we're an excellent bridging strategy because we can leverage all the investments that you've made. There's no additional engineering effort required to get your platform running or your application running on Tizen. And you can, as Joyce nicely said, you can throw against the wall. You can see what sticks. So you get your application running on the Tizen environment, and then start monitoring things. See how well your application is doing, and when it makes sense, go write native or use Unity. Yeah.
Thank you.
So Luke, let's talk a little bit from the perspective of an app developer here in terms of portability. What made you decide to look at Tizen here?
So as a company that makes an app, we're always on the prowl to see who's out there investing in ideas of distribution, and I think Tizen is an idea for distribution. I mean, I'm looking at it metaphorically from how I look at the world, and anybody who's investing time, money, energy in building platforms, OSs. And marketplaces. There are lots and lots of stores that have come up, third-party stores across different platforms. So we look at them very carefully, and then when they're backed by a very, very solid, well-renowned, company, is obviously something that's going to stay and stick. And we put our neck out. That's the beauty of being in India. We have resources which are R&D. Let's do something that we don't know nothing about. That's what the team is called, and and put it out because. Some of the early advantages of, and everybody has known the legacy of the Valley and how people have got where they've got. They just got there because they did it first. No one guaranteed them success. So we do that. And also one interesting kind of segue to this is every time someone comes in a very, very hostile, overpopulated marketplace, like we're talking smartphone OS, we're not talking rocket ship, there must be 5 insights that have emerged from the group that's putting it together that we obviously don't know of, but we can take advantage of. And that's our job, right? So to kind of glean the insight of who the OS owner is and ride that wave because they believe in it.
Okay, very good. Well, so let's maybe get a bit more tactical here in terms of how that actually works. Chandra, let's start with you. So for a developer who's in the room here who's saying, all right, I got an app, it's for a different app store, what does it actually take to get onto Tizen as quickly and as easily as possible? What's that process look like if you're using ACL? What can a developer expect if they leave this room today and want to do this?
So we make it very easy to get your application into the Tizen store. As I like to say, the hardest part is actually filling out the paperwork, the distribution paperwork. Basically, we'll take your APK. You actually come to our store, you do the registration process, you upload metadata, your screenshots, all about your app. And then we'll work with Samsung and work with you to get it tested, get it validated, get it on the store, and then from there, you use your whatever analytics that you have, take a look at all your KPIs, see how your application is doing. You can do your fine tuning like that you currently do, and we just make it very easy for you.
Okay, makes sense. So
guessing you're gonna ask me
your
right?
next choice. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So can you walk us through the process of if you have an existing Unity app that's running in the Unity 5 SDK, what it takes to actually get it in the Tizen store?
So we support Tizen like we would any other mobile platform. Essentially, once you author your game, then you go to build to target, and from there you select your user preference options and just replace in your script. You need to replace text that says, typically, let's say we take Android as an example, where it says Unity_Android, replace it with Unity_Tizen and build. So of course, we also had this conversation earlier. The time frame it takes for it to build is depending on the complexity of your game. But other than that, those 4 steps will essentially take you there. And if you have more questions or you like to actually see how it's done, we have, Tizen has actually organized for our product evangelists to actually run a workshop tomorrow. So you can take your questions and have a workshop session there as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's actually, that kind of leads into a kind of a follow-on question of what sorts of support can you expect if you're a developer who goes through this, say you get stuck? I mean, what?
Okay.
It doesn't sound like it. Both of these sound like fairly straightforward solutions. But say you get stuck and say you need help, where do you go?
So like any other platform that we support today, Android, iOS, Windows, we provide the same level of support for Tizen developers. And so if you have any questions, you have our support Unity 3D, our forums, answers, learn. As much as quickly as we get information from Tizen, we put it up on our website so you can access that. And of course, tomorrow's workshop is also a great opportunity to ask questions. You can bring the questions there.
Okay, makes sense. Chandra, I mean, so for ACL, how much prep work is typically required, and is there support available for developers?
Oh, absolutely. Before I answer that question,
Sure.
I just wanted to say Joyce's Unity Engine and Open Mobile actually work together. So you'll take an application that's already pre-compiled for Android, say Temple Run, for instance. They're a big Unity user. We'll actually take that binary and we'll run the Unity Engine as part of the compatibility package. So in that case, there's no recompilation required.
Yeah.
I'm going out on a limb here, but Tizen support was added in Unity 5, right?
That's right.
So particularly for versions prior to Unity 5, that is certainly almost
correct.
a no-brainer there.
Yeah.
It's actually complementary. So to add on, if let's say you already have a running application, so to speak, you can actually then look to Open Mobile to test it out, throw it on the Velcro wall.
Yeah. As far as the prep work is required, again, very little. The key is, get us the APKs. We'll do our testing and just get it up on the store, and just start monitoring, see how successful, and let's grow the ecosystem. Okay,
makes sense. All right, so let's maybe go to some broader questions here, specifically about Tizen and the Z1 and just in general the Indian market. I'd be interested in some thoughts. Luke, let's start with you about why is Tizen right for this market? Why what do you think has gone well here?
We just ported our first game to Tizen, which is actually our #1 cricket game in the country called Power Cricket. And obviously we're going to look at the process was pretty simple, smooth. Obviously it takes a game is a living animal. You just can't replace its organs by code. You got to get into it and really treat it with tender, loving care. I don't agree that you can just write code, and it doesn't work like that. But having said that, when you've recreated that organism, I think that the ability is the whole Samsung backdrop is very powerful in a country like India because everybody knows that brand. I think that it's a fresh approach to app stores. A lot of app stores have now got really crowded. One of them is extremely difficult to even understand. One is extremely, everybody's on it, but it's not easy to get something done. So with every app store comes love. and every developer loves App Store love. So one expectation is new App Stores will have that kind of, care for developers. And the third is, as the ecosystem begins to develop and partners work together, I think some of the mistakes or some of the not required, legacies of the earlier app stores can easily be avoided. And say for example, rating system. Let me give you a direct example. Some app stores don't let the older reviews float above the newer reviews. Some nest them under the older reviews. Now that's a pain, because if I've updated my game 24 times, why am I looking at version 1.24? And these are small things that actually really make or break a game, which we expect app developers and app store owners to change. So yeah, I mean, everything new is good.
Yeah, very good. That's a good perspective. So Chandra, what are your thoughts on Tizen in India?
So having been involved in Tizen, actually, from the Migo days, I'm very excited. I think there's a huge opportunity with the next billion people getting onto the internet, enabling information sharing, and many other applications that we haven't even thought about with more people coming in online. And I think Tizen is uniquely positioned, and we can see from the success of the Z1 in India how that it's hit the sweet spot. And now we can replicate that into many other countries. I think it will be the operating system for the next billion people.
I guess, okay.
You're up.
All right, so for Uni's perspective is, one, we often say our mission is democratizing game development and success. And so success is now the second part of the mission statement that we're trying to make it happen for all of you here. And one of the key things that Alok mentioned earlier, games is always something of interest, whether for snacking, as you put it, or something you get really into. So when you have a new platform and a new opportunity, I was in the keynote earlier today, and I'm really excited to hear about the overall plan Samsung and Tizen have to move beyond just the phone, the wearable, the whole Internet of Things. So imagine your game where if you're anywhere in the house, you can play on your watch to your phone. The potential of you being successful is to be able to reach all these users. And with 1 million phones sold in the last 6 months, can you imagine once they launch a bigger array of devices and basically whole Internet of Things blows up, you will actually be able to gain success monetary-wise or fame through adoption. Gaming is always going to be there. Gamification is big, and Unity wants to put developers in front of this gazillion of users.
Yep. Of course, we're constantly adding new markets here, so we're up to 4 now and continuing. But you bring up a good point about moving beyond mobile. So one of the things we did talk about, and I talked about earlier as well, was multiple profiles and multiple different device types. So Unity support is not just for mobile. We also have Unity support in the Tizen TV SDK.
That's right, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about multiple platform here? How it relates to gaming and where you guys see this going?
So I'll go back to my previous statement again. Yeah. Gaming is, we see it everywhere, beside mobile, on TV. We play a lot of our games in front of the TV through consoles, but to be able to play it natively, it would make it so much more better experience for users. And from Unity's perspective, we always try to see it from a developer's perspective. It's really important to kind of provide you the ability to build to these platforms and gain access to the users. So I'm kind of repeating myself, but essentially, Unity wants to support all different platforms with Tizen, so that you as developers don't have to deal with all that. We basically make it ready. You just build from the editor, and boom, you have access to users.
That's a good answer. So I think I'm looking at the time here. We actually are. We do have some time to open up to the audience for questions, and I don't know if there are any questions out here for anybody. Yes, we have a question. I'll just come down with the microphone.
guess I've been out now.
Wow.
Okay. Okay, so the topic of today is then, now, and tomorrow. So actually a question for you.
Okay.
What did you learn from then, which you know you cannot repeat to go to tomorrow?
That's a good question. I probably ought to sit down for that one. All right, that's better. Well, so I will give the caveat that for the past number of years I was Linux Foundation and working closely on this project, but my answer is not speaking for Samsung because really I am recently a Samsung employee. In terms of things that we have learned from then that we are looking forward to now, one of the big things has been partnerships with companies like this really, really matter to app developers. When Tizen first started out, if you look at the way that apps are developed, you largely developed apps specifically within a native SDK. You said, I'm developing this app for Android. Oh gosh, I got to port everything now to support iOS. And oh man, there's a new one. There's Tizen. Now I have to worry about porting things across different platforms. In the time since then, really we've seen Open Mobile evolve, which of course the premise there is you already put all that investment into one of these. Let's get it onto other platforms easily. And Unity has just absolutely taken the market by storm, which is write to something in the middle, and then we'll help you deploy. One of the biggest things that I've seen, and honestly, I'm saying this looking at it as an outsider, one of the smartest moves on Tizen was building these relationships over time with these companies to make it easier for the app developer. Because if you don't make it easy for the app developer, they're not going to come. So I think that's probably the big, at least from my perspective, probably one of the biggest things was it's a much different story than it was originally, which was here's a native SDK, go ahead and write to it, which still works for some people, but the vast majority of app developers on the planet, if they have an easier path, they're going to take it, and we want to make that easy for them.
Hi, my name is Alok. I have a company of 5 people. We are working here for 5 years and mainly into games, as Alok said, like dressing up games. Oh, the girls make up themselves. Those work really well in the App Store. So one thing we started with Bada and did a good business with Samsung. And Samsung contacted us that can you port your favorite games into Tizen. We ported that. We made about like $500 million from Samsung. They paid us. But when Z1 launched, they told that these 2.2 games will not run on 2.3. And they are still lying there. They paid for that hefty amount. They are not using it. Like, can you explain that? And will it happen for 2.4 also? Like, we will again have to go through the certification in the App Store.
Yeah, so I hear what you're saying. That was actually before my time, and I don't want to use this as an excuse to not answer the question, but this is something where I personally wasn't involved with that and don't have a good answer for you. What I will say, though, let's talk afterwards. It's a question that I can't answer. I wish that I could answer it for you, but it's just this is outside of where I was involved.
Okay.
So I'm sorry.
Yeah. That's okay. But one more thing, like compared to even Android, Google Play Store, or if you say Amazon App Store or Opera Mobile, or anything you take, Samsung takes around 5 to 7 days to approve an app. Whereas in Google, it's maybe 1 day. Mm-hmm. In Opera Mobile, couple of hours. Mm-hmm.
And what about iTunes?
No, we don't develop for iOS.
Yeah, do you know how long it takes on iTunes? At least 2 weeks if you're lucky.
But that doesn't, that is not a good thing, right? I'm out of that. That's why maybe or not.
I wasn't arguing about whether
See,
it's good or bad.
we
it's just
are
a
maybe
philosophy
good or
of app stores.
No, maybe good or bad, but app stores need developers, right? The Z1 could not be launched because there were not a lot of apps. That is the true fact.
Sorry, I may chime in here a little bit. The situation is happen. But my background came from publishing, and there were days when we used to port games to Samsung devices. And one of the key things is Samsung has one of the most stringent testing requirements. And we used to spend weekends not sleeping, just trying to get the QA report done for Samsung. And I can understand where you're coming from. The positive way I like to look at it, and that's what we do to kind of get everybody up and awake in the day, is that once you clear your game on Samsung and it's passed, you will have very little issue with the game. And all of us should strive to make the user experience good, because we love to make games. But so one of the questions is, does the user like your game? And is it playing well? Does it crash? Because the worst thing that can happen is Samsung ships a game with a phone with a game on it and it crashes, because they're not going to say, okay, who's the developer? They're going to say, hey, Samsung, you're... And that's not good for either company, because you don't get to monetize. They get bad feedback. So it is painful as a developer, as a publisher, because there's all publishers here and all developers here. But the due diligence that Samsung takes that 8 days to return you the feedback and say you clear is also 8 days of their lives that they're not going to see again, that they're testing and making sure your game runs well on them. So it is a way of life. You need to QA, you need to make sure it works. So I hope that kind of helps a bit.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, I guess one of the other things to keep in mind, it is still a fairly new platform when it really comes down to it. And the first issue that you had, the 2.2 to 2.3 API change, that was a fairly significant change. And as a result, the one thing to keep in mind is that well, I mean, as she said, it's the store team in Samsung wants for you to perform well as well. And a big part of that is making sure that the first experience the user has with Tizen and the first experience the user has with your app on Tizen is not a poor one. And so that's difficult, and I can sympathize. It's frustrating to have to wait or to be told to go back and change things and come back. But in the end, the goal is ultimately to achieve wide-scale adoption here so that you can make more money with your game because more people like it. Or app, or it doesn't necessarily have to be a game. But it is important to kind of keep that in mind, is that overall it's not just, let's just slow this process down so that we can make it frustrating for the app developers. It's let's provide a better experience for the user, so essentially the app developers get more money out of it.
Yeah, you can just take it as a feedback from developer.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Duly noted. Thank you. We got one back there.
Hi, I'm Komal from Mob Matrix.
Hi.
We have more than 500 applications in Google Play Store. And the problem what we are facing, half of the Android developers are also facing, I suppose. Mm-hmm. What will happen? Samsung is taking 7 days. I don't mind for that. Google hardly take 2 hours. But it will take 2 minutes for them to suspend the account. Right? Whenever we publish the app, they'll directly upload into the market. And without giving any reason, they'll suspend the app, and down the line, they'll suspend the account. And when we ask the question, what is the reason, they'll just say, read our policy. And the policy is not this much. It's like a vast, like an ocean. So what is your plan about it? Will you be suspending the account the way Google Play is doing? Or what is your, how you'll be helping developer in this case?
It's all you, Brian.
All right, I'm already sitting down, so I have to take my glasses off. Jeez. No, I have to be honest with you. This is a Tizen store policy question. That's not a question that I would even know how to begin to answer. Again, I would make the offer though. I mean, this is helpful feedback. Let's connect afterwards and let's talk about this, and I'll figure out who to route it to. I think that this is, again, the store team, the Tizen store team. Tizen store is relatively new. If you look at the age of the Tizen platform and also look at the Tizen store, which means the policies are new as well. So I think a lot of these things are very much in flux.
Policy, I agree about it. Yeah. What Amazon will do is they'll give a proper step that yes, you are missing here. You are keeping Google Play Store link instead of Amazon link. Yeah. So kindly correct it and then we'll publish. So that procedure is good enough for us to actually rectify the mistake, because we are human, we'll do mistake. But
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you have to suspend altogether and they'll say you're not allowed to open one more account. So we have got that restriction as well. So, how Tizen will be taking care of it, even Google Play, what they'll do is, they'll come up with some new policy every year. And they'll say, within 15 days, do it or die.
Okay.
Do or die kind of thing. So we don't want that kind of policy in Tizen. That will actually help us to move all together into Tizen with all 500 applications what we have into the market in Google Play.
Okay. Let's talk.
So
talk.
have you thought about it? Actually,
Yeah.
When you're coming up with a SDK like this, you might have thought about what user are facing or developer is facing in this direction. So
I think she needs to talk to you.
whoever,
Well, that's actually
it's
that's
an
a good
open
point.
question for all.
He can make your life easy.
I can make your life easier getting the applications onto onto Tizen, but the actual mechanics, I think I'm going to punt back to you.
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to punt that to the store team. Yeah, no.
It's okay. You
yeah.
can take your time, but please keep this in mind that we should not face this kind of problem, and it will actually give a special preference to Tizen than Android if you come up with this kind of points for developers.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
I do appreciate the feedback, and I really do mean it. Let's.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The reality is, in order to get people to develop Tizen, we have to be nice. If we're not nice, you will all run away. So we may make mistakes along the way. There are real humans behind Tizen. Maybe there's some policy that is going to annoy you or trip you up. Go and find one of the real humans, people like me, or like Brian, or like the other names and faces you have, and go and bring the matter up, tell them, and they'll go to bat for you. We won't just be a faceless big blob that you can't argue with. So hopefully we can make your life easy. We will make mistakes. It will happen. We'll apologize in advance. But we hope we can make your life better. There are humans here as well.
And for the record, anybody is welcome to argue with that guy. So it's actually quite fun. I do it all the time. It is one of his hobbies, getting into arguments. No, that is a good point, Karsten. Thank you.
Hi, so I'm from the Bangladesh ORC, and recently we did a couple of workshops with university students. So these questions are actually from them, and they're two-folds. Number one, and probably Karsten will probably chime in also on this one, is students are saying that if they want to develop in native apps, the ramp up is pretty high. Like they have to do it in C because it was C++ before. Now from 2.3 it's C, but you can still do it in C++. But then they also have to learn about EFL, and that's also pretty new to the developer community. So what is the plan to basically bring all these developers up to speed to native app development? The other question probably was for Joyce, is like when they're using Unity for developing apps, what language do they use?
They would use C#.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but what we can do also, and maybe I can talk to you after this, is that Unity is really interested to figure out what we can do in terms of workshops for the developer community. We haven't had a good sit-down session, and maybe we can work with you on this, to plan out workshops that make sense, that will answer questions that the developers have. And this is not just to the school students, but anybody in this room. We would love to have a conversation and find out what you need, whether we can come in to do a workshop, hands-on, or a presentation to answer some of the hard questions that you have. Today, I think a lot of it's thrown at Brian, but I'll be really happy to kind of sit down and plan out a session of roadshows or workshops in all of India, together with Tizen Samsung to answer some of these questions, work with them, do a hands-on workshop.
Yeah.
I hope that answers your question.
Yeah,
Second part, I'll answer the first part of your question. And then I think we're getting the hook over here to get off the stage. So the answer to your first part of your question actually comes in multiple stages. The first one is that if you are a native app developer, keep an eye out for what we call dev labs. So there's one that's happening, no, I guess it already happened, but there are a few that are happening, actually a number of countries around the world. And the idea of a dev lab is that the best place to learn something like this is from one of the experts. So a dev lab is a dedicated session where Samsung sends in somebody who knows application development, Tizen application development inside and out. They walk you through getting the SDK configured, actually writing your first app, building it and deploying it, and then going through the steps to get it into the Tizen store. And this is the single best way to learn how to do native Tizen application programming. Well, native or web or wearable, depending upon what the focus is of the dev lab. Because you have somebody who's there who's actually walking you through it, you're doing it yourself, and you have the help when you need it. If you don't have the opportunity for this, we do have a number of things out on developer.tizen.org. We actually have a fairly comprehensive set of documentation that's constantly being updated that walks through, here's how you build a UI in a native app, and here are the things, basically, here's exactly what you need to know. You may not need to know everything about EFL, you may not need to know everything about C, but here are the things that you need to know and some sample apps to at least get you started so you can bootstrap yourself. And then the other thing, we also have some webinars as well that will help you understand this, and then use the forums. I mean, this is what they're for. Forums, we've got mailing lists, and all sorts of ways for people to ask for help. We need them to ask. So, IRC channels, absolutely. So Karsten's very active on IRC, certainly, and a number of the other EFL team members are.
Yeah, I probably also want to talk about the tool set that, for example, that Windows Mobile or Android SDK comes with a handy set of tools. If you want to write an app, you can just drag and drop a bunch of stuff, and then it starts, creating your GUI and all that.
Yeah, we have that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're talking about Inventor, probably, right? But that works.
No. There's a new actual GUI builder where you drag and drop widgets.
Yeah.
Okay.
For native UI.
For the new one? Okay.
There's a whole bunch of other tools as well that are coming. More tools are coming. Things will improve. Things take time.
Right.
Nothing is done perfectly day zero.
Right.
But they will improve. So, and feedback is useful. Feedback is necessary. Also, find people, ask questions. The best way to get answers is ask questions. There is a lot of knowledge floating around, and it isn't in a nice little document you can print out. It's in people's heads, and if you ask the questions, they can often point you in the right direction and save you a hell of a lot of time.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot. And probably, sorry, one more quick question is the monetization story of Tizen for app developers. I think that question has been asked already. But like, how do they make money if they develop apps in Tizen? That's the part.
So a couple of things, at least right now, there's a promotion that started, which was 1 year from the date of the first Tizen mobile launch, 100% revenue share for app developers. So, essentially, it's we want to see the early adopters and the early committers get something back out of it, and that's really what that is. There are a number of different ways that you can add either in-app purchases or integrate advertising into your apps. We have plugins to the Tizen SDK. We were talking earlier, if you're bringing over an app, say from Android using ACL, then a lot of the monetization actually stays pretty much the same. So there are a lot of different ways to do this. If you are, in the case that you gave, where it's somebody who's actually writing a native app in Tizen, you'd want to go on to developer.tizen.org, look into the add-on SDKs, and these are plugins to Eclipse. Eclipse is the framework that we use for our overall Tizen SDK. There are plugins for Eclipse that will add in-app purchasing and so forth. So, yeah. Okay, I am being informed that we need to clear off the stage here, folks. Everybody, thank you for coming today. And give a round of applause to our panelists here.
Thank you.
Thank you all. And if you have any questions, I know that there are two at least that I'll be getting afterwards. Definitely, we'll be around for a little while here. And as Karsten said, we want for you to point out places where we can be doing better. Our goal is to give you a good experience and give the client a good experience, the end client a good experience, because ultimately that's what makes all of us happy. So, all right, thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, once again, a huge round of applause for the complete team of panelists and Brand that was brilliantly moderated. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, to take this particular panel discussion further, probably the panel members are just around for any more questions if you all want answers for. That was Brand. Thank you.